Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fly the Coop. We're so excited to see you today and to introduce you to well-renowned Joan Soranno, an architect in the Twin Cities who has done some amazing work. And I've been very, very interested in interviewing you, Joan, for a long time. So I'm honored to have you on the show today. Thank you for being with us.
Nice to be here, Cari Ann.
So let's delve right into this. Visit with us and tell everybody about you and the work that you've been doing in the Twin Cities and what your story is. Let's start there.
Yeah, well, I'm an architect, as Cari Ann said, in Minneapolis. I work for a company, HGA, Hamel Green and Abramson, and we are full service architecture and engineering firm in downtown Minneapolis. We have offices all around the country, but I have a studio within HGA with my husband, John Cook, and we focus primarily on actually cultural projects and religious. And we've done a lot of work around the Twin Cities, most notably at the Walker Art Center. We put an addition onto their museum in 2017. We also did the Lakewood Garden Mausoleum project in Lakewood Cemetery.
Beautiful.
And we also added on to Temple Israel Synagogue. So again, we do a lot of work for communities, but interestingly enough, we haven't done a lot of residential until we just completed our own house on Lake of the Isles,
which I had the privilege to spend some time in this week. And that's how I was honored enough to convince Joan to come on the show today. Amazing piece of real estate. We're going to give people a little taste of what you created, Joan. So share with them your inspiration and how this all came to be, because it's a pretty cool story.
Well, Lake of the Isles, again, historic lake within, Minneapolis. And we lived not far by. And on the way to work, we go around Lake of the Isles every day, and we saw a for sale sign on an empty lot next to one of the iconic historic homes around Lake of the Isles. And so we had to act fast. We talked amongst ourselves within a day and made an offer and decided to kind of build our dream home. And then as we were working on that, there was a kind of a spontaneous or serendipitous, I was on the site taking pictures of the surrounding houses, and the house next door, the historic home, was on sale. And former clients of ours was looking at the house, and they saw me, recognized me, and long story short, they bought the house and asked us to renovate and add on to that historic home. So we've got this little compound on Lake of the Isles that, again, a very modern house of ours, and then a historic addition to this historic home.
So a little bit more about this. I had reached out to Joan because I was working with the owners of this beautiful home on the lake, and I needed some perspective from Joan because of the lot split, because this property that Joan purchased at one time, this was one piece of real estate. So we had the land and then this home on the lake. They did, because of sustainability, really just being able to leverage the right buyer match, because this home you're renovating right now, albeit historic, very difficult. And I think that people know this, whether you're local or national and you're part of a historic district, the limitations that we're faced with as our homes are aging, Joan, and there becomes a sustainability and cost analysis that's real. And how do we preserve and bring these homes into the 21st century so they're fueling and able to provide a lifestyle that people really want, right? Um, that was a that was a work in progress. This went on for almost 5 years, where the original owner of this property, everybody was trying to figure out what they're going to do, because there's this lot that Joan's got this beautiful home on now, which took almost 2 years to build. Uh, let's talk a little bit about that, because I think we're seeing, not only in our city, Joan, but all over the country. One of the reasons I wanted to bring you on the program, how do we navigate that, the balance between dealing with the bureaucracy of cities that really want to preserve their old historic homes, and the practicality that comes with renovation? How do you play in that arena successfully? Because you did it successfully.
Right, but there was a process to go through, because again, Lake of the Isles is a historic area. It's not formally designated, but it has a lot of beautiful historic homes.
Mm-hmm.
So the city wants to preserve these historic homes, but at the same time, a lot of these old houses aren't conducive to the way people like to live now,
Mm-hmm.
which a lot of times is big open space.
Yep.
Space all on one level.
Mm-hmm.
This historic home, which was built in 1929, had multiple levels.
I know.
It was not accessible.
It was
So
amazing.
in some ways, it was discriminating against any people that had any kind of, limited mobility, because you had to go upstairs to get into the house,
Mm-hmm.
either through the garage or the outside. And so, a lot of people need that one level type living. So, and, there was a lot of kind of smaller rooms all strung out along a hallway. And again, people like more openness,
Yeah.
more transparency. And so, we worked really hard to completely, rethink that house in how people live.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes a huge investment.
Massive.
These are not small plans, and they take a lot of resources. But ultimately it is about preservation, even though part of the original house was demolished. The additions, to me, make the house desirable and sustainable for the next 100 years.
Absolutely. I call it it stands the test of time while respecting the architecture and the face of the home, redesigning something that's over 100 years old, or nearly 100 years old in this case.
And we made a conscious choice. I mean, we're architects that do contemporary architecture. We really don't do a lot of historic, traditional style. But with that historic home, we knew that we had to put historic additions onto it, because to put a contemporary one would be way too out of character with the historic, Tudor style of the original home. So again, we just continued the gable roof forms, the slate roof, the stucco, the brick surrounds around the windows, traditional windows, dormers. So if you look at our two houses, our house is very contemporary. It's flat roofed, large windows, minimal detailing. And the house next door has the detailing similar to 1929.
As it should be. And I think the compilation's stunning, and the views from this location onto the lake are absolutely magnificent. Now, everyone needs to know that this isn't in character with Joan or John's mission. I mean, you're commercial, you're doing big projects. This was truly an attempt to right size and help friends and your neighbors. It's just a labor of love, this project, for sure. A labor
Oh,
of
absolutely.
lots of time.
Absolutely. And we tried to also, in terms of our house, we're empty nesters. It's just the two of us. So we try to right size our own home. Most of the houses around like the Isles are fairly large.
Mhm.
A lot of them have, families inside them. And so we wanted to right size this home. So by lake standards, it's actually quite small.
Mhm.
Again, by lake standards, it's about
Right.
3,000 square feet. But we try to design the house in such a way as that there's no room in the house that we don't use every single day.
Mhm.
We try to be as efficient as possible.
Well, and don't you agree, Joan, that our future and the expectations in the marketplace, as I call it, the youngification of our market, the future is a home design like yours. People, I call it the piece of jewelry. People want a piece of jewelry. They don't want a giant. They want something that's highly crafted and really well servicing and beautiful. And that's what you created.
Yep. And the other thing we try to do is that we try to create different kinds of exterior spaces that the inside of the house could relate to. So again, there's a front yard to it, but the house is organized around a exterior courtyard in the back.
Mhm.
So there's a very private space in the back that actually you can look through the windows and see to the lake. So the lake is it's a very public lake. There's hundreds of people around every single day, which we love.
Mhm.
So we have a patio that looks out to that. So if we're feeling like, we want to kind of be out in the masses, we're out in the front, but then the courtyard is much more serene. It's much more quiet and private. So we try to maximize outdoor space, even though we live in a cold weather climate, just being able to relate to the outdoors in
Mhm.
any season was really important to us.
Yeah, I mean, I think your vision is magnificent and one of the finest examples of an empty nester and right sizing. It could be any age group, frankly. You know,
Mhm.
anyone that's an executive that's in a place where they maybe are a couple or maybe they have one child. The design of your home, I said to Johnny when I was with you this week, you guys could take those plans and sell them for real. I mean, it's really impressive. The quality of the finishes, the design, and it is masterful. It truly is. And the experiential component to the interior, which I'm a huge advocate of interior livability to the exterior, like that mobility and that movement of energy moving in and out. It's experiential. You can't even imagine um, it until you experience it. It's really, really, really well done.
Well, and the other thing we try to do with our house is try to make the house open to the lake, to the bike path, to the sidewalk. So as people are walking by, there's large windows that are open that people can see us living inside. Now, a lot of people would maybe feel a little nervous about the kind of the fishbowl effect. But what we like is that it it makes you feel connected to the neighborhood and to the lake in a really special way. So our kitchen, our dining room, our living room is not in the back of the house,
Right.
which most houses are organized that the formal living space face the lake and they live in the back of the house. We
Mhm.
live in the front of the house and
I love
people
it.
can see that. And again, to me, it just creates a much friendlier streetscape
Mhm.
and creates friendlier neighborhoods. So there's a dialogue between people living in their houses and the street.
I love it. And granted, there are places that doesn't apply, but there are so many communities and neighborhoods that it does apply. And it's a vision that you don't see often. So I'm really excited to share it. And that's a whole other conversation. I truly believe those plans that you've created are money. I mean, it's really well thought out. When you are advising, I know you don't do a lot of residential, but since we have you on the show and we will certainly be connecting the dots to make sure you can learn more about Joan, what would you advise um, somebody who's planning their like dream home, regardless of styling? What would be your best advice, Joan, on how to enter into that experience and really embrace it and honor what it is people really want to do, especially as a couple, when maybe they're not necessarily on the same page? How do you navigate that?
Are you talking about, if they're just kind of starting to think, what steps would they go? I think, I'm going to put a little plug in for architects
Mm-hmm.
because again, there's many different ways to build a home. There's hiring a builder who
Mm-hmm.
kind of has the design aspect and the construction aspect rolled into one.
Mm-hmm.
And there are talented builders out there, but I would advocate that the greatest houses, the most talked about homes, are usually homes that are designed by an architect.
Mm-hmm.
So I would think very carefully about, how you want to build your home, how you want your home designed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then a lot of it is making sure that the people that you work with are aligned with what your goals are,
Mm-hmm.
not with what their goals are.
Yeah, it's a big issue out there.
It's a big issue. And, understanding exactly what you want and making sure you're working with people that, again, respect and honor, what you want is
Mm-hmm.
really, really critical.
So you and John designed this together, this home.
We did.
Mhm.
And we took an interesting tactic. Now we are of the generation of architects that we grew up hand drawing drawings before computer.
Mhm.
We do not actually draw our drawings on computer. We have others to do that for, younger architects to help us. When we designed our house, we decided we weren't going to hire anybody to do drawings for us. We were going to do everything ourselves. So we actually hand drew 50 sheets, large sheets of drawings ourselves. So
Mhm.
we drafted, and then we actually built study models, and we did it all without computers, which
Awesome.
in
I
this
love
day and
it.
age is really, really unique. Everyone uses computers.
No.
I even relearned how to draw a scaled 1 and 2 point perspective to study the design. So we went old school, and it was just fabulous because I think both of us got into architecture because we love to draw
Mhm.
and we love drafting. And so we call it the analog house because again, it's done without any kind of technology or computers.
I love that story. That's amazing, Joan. And it's such a lost art, isn't it?
It
It's
is. I mean, one of the reasons, again, I'm an architect is because I love beautiful drawings, architecture drawings. Um, and I love nothing more than to actually draw those things. So it was, we decided when we built or bought the property in 2019, we were thinking we were going to sit on it for a couple years. But
Mhm.
when COVID hit, a couple months later,
I remember. Yeah.
we had all this time because a lot of our projects at HGA disappeared, and so we were actually working reduced hours, and
Mhm.
so we thought, let's go for it.
Yeah.
Let's spend this free time, really pushing the design and drawings so we could get this done sooner than later. So it's kind of a COVID house also,
Mhm.
done kind of right in the middle of all of that.
There's actually a lot of design that was done during COVID because of time.
Yep.
It's a time, that's something that people need to understand. It's a commitment. a real commitment to delve down the dream of building your perfect vision home. You have to be committed to the long game. There's no easy rip off the band-aid quick and one and done. It doesn't work like that. What was your
Yeah.
total time in, Joan, on this whole thing from start to end, from design to moving in?
What was the period of time?
From the
We
moment.
bought the property in June of 2019 and we moved in June of 2022.
There you go.
So it was 3 years, about a year and 2 months of construction, so about 14 months. And, it was a year and some time for design. And again, a lot of our work, I think a signature of our work is how every detail, every square inch is kind of figured out. And we applied that to our house. And again, it can be exhausting. I mean, when you have the architect saying, what kind of handles do you want on the doors or the cabinets, or what kind of lighting do you want in every single room? The decisions are overwhelming. I can remember many nights like Googling toilet paper holder, wall mounted toilet paper holder, because so it just, there's an endless stream of decisions that you have to make. But it's a gift to be able to have that experience of being able to choose every single thing about your house. It's exactly what you want. We had never lived in a new house before.
Oh my
So it's just, every day we're grateful for this house.
Your energy and presence is so calm and well thought out how your person is. If you were to give somebody a piece of advice, a person who wants to build a piece of advice, how do you dig deep to find the patience? It's when you have the passion to create something so highly customized and will be the forever home. I think most people that I meet really think, oh, I can get this all done in 1 year, all wrapped up. I can design and build it and I can move in. How do you teach the lesson of being resilient and being patient and embracing the moment, the experience, so it's a positive one? Because people struggle with that.
Yeah, they do, because I think our culture, our society is, I think technology has hurt this. It's instant gratification, right? We want instant gratification. We can now order something from Amazon, and with hours, it's at our doorstep. And we don't have to do a thing, right? It's a click of a button.
Yeah.
But what you realize is that when you take the time to actually spend that time to create something that you truly, truly makes you happy, it's really incredibly rewarding. And you also realize that within the span of a lifetime, 3 years, 2 years is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket. What do we have? 30 years to enjoy this house, and 3 years is, can go by quickly. And I just think, because we're architects, again, I think you just have to keep the larger picture in mind, that you're building your dream home. And like anything that's of any value, it takes time and it takes work.
You have to be committed and you have to be patient.
And you have to also understand that it's not going to be easy. And I think a lot of people, do they want the headache or the bother? And again, I think it's keeping in mind there's a big difference between building a dream home and building or just moving into a home.
Two different things entirely.
Two totally different things.
Mhm.
And so um, I highly, highly recommend it. Um, but it's going to take some elbow grease.
Mhm. So what I find your story, the uniqueness of the project, not only the one you're living in now, but the neighboring home, that's just a one-off. Like, you just don't see this kind of evolution of preserving something historic and bringing it into the 21st century and doing a land separation, a lot split, and building a contemporary all in one fail sweep. It's to me a story that's I'd love to do a vision board of that process. I've got
Yeah.
to send you because I've got a beautiful photo shoot that I'll share with everybody of what the house was. And it'll be really fun to photograph it if I can when it's done, because I think it's super impressive what you two have brought to the table. And not only you and I, when we were visiting in the house, that piece of land is just sitting there for all those years. No one was even using it. Prime real estate, everybody. It was just a
Yeah.
yard that nobody was using with these views of the lake that are breathtaking, absolutely breathtaking.
Right. Well, and the historic home is on a point. There are only 2 points on Lake of the Isles where houses have more than just one view.
Mhm,
And this historic house has both a south view and an east view. Now,
mhm,
when the house was designed in 1929, the house was oriented along the east side. And so they weren't really taking advantage of the south view.
mhm,
And so what we try to maximize is the whole idea of the advantage of being on a point. So
mhm,
all the major rooms are oriented south and east. So
mhm.
there's always a different view of the lake. And
Yeah,
so in some ways, the additions improved upon that aspect of the historic house, where again, there was only one orientation. We tried to capitalize on those two views. And
mhm.
again, I think any architect would have figured that out. But yes, I am definitely, as an architect, I might be biased, but I am definitely in the camp of, you know, places like this. Yeah, to have an open piece of property, I think, is a shame. And I feel like it's better to have a house well designed
I
that
agree.
people can enjoy.
Mhm. So, speaking to our local market, and I mean, I've worked out in Manhattan with agents before in historic areas in California. Like, this goes on everywhere where you've got these beautiful pieces of real estate. They're really being underutilized and really are in need um, of facelift. And kind of everyone's beating their head against the wall to make that happen because the bureaucracy, if you will, um, and the barriers, most people don't have they don't have the long game in mind or don't have the gumption to push through the bound. There's barriers, right? There's a lot of walls up with the mission that the two of you ventured into, along with this family that purchased the home. What do you think do you think that's improving? What do you think the solutions are around that? As you look at metropolitan cities that are aging out, because this is a real issue. Like, this is happening right now. We've got historic areas all over the country that homes need to be, they're going to fall apart if something's not done. And it's not feasible to renovate them as they set. Like, the cost to do business, as we both know, it just doesn't make sense. Things have to be unraveled and then rebuilt again. So, what do you do about that? How do you navigate that successfully? And do you see
Yeah,
changes happening because of it?
yeah, it's really hard because again, a lot of it has to do with city zoning,
Mhm.
right? and kind of the restrictions or the freedoms that you have to do with dealing with these old historic houses. But unfortunately, one of the first things you need is the resources to do it right.
Money. Yeah.
Because we've seen examples of historic homes being renovated in a wrong or inexpensive way.
Absolutely.
Right? They go to Home Depot, they go to Menards. There's no finesse about how these houses are being updated.
Mhm.
You know, it might have a clay tile roof and then they put asphalt shingle roofs on it.
Right.
And this is what was so extraordinary about our next door. These owners were able to put in the resources necessary to do what was necessary to the home. And it was significant.
Yeah.
Because again, it just didn't, the property had changed hands a lot in the last 15 years. Because I think people got into these houses and realized this is not how I want to live anymore. So I think cities can be more open in terms of their zoning and rules about how these houses can transform.
I agree.
I think we need more people willing to put in the resources to preserve these neighborhoods. So it's a mix.
It is a mix. I agree with you. So jumping into the commercial component, I want to visit a little bit about the work you do. What inspired you to go down the path that you're on? For those that are out there that are considering doing the work you do. And the second part of that question, Joan, is how did you survive the technology changes? Because they've come very quickly if you look at your bandwidth of your career, the entire technological component to the work you do is like a head spinner from my perspective. So how did you survive that? I mean, your story on how you built this house really emulates that very piece of talent that you've got that most do not.
Right. Well, again, I got into architecture because I love to draw, and I really came at it from the artistic side. If you look up the definition of architecture, it's the art and science of building. I'm a little bit more the art side. My husband's the science side, although he's incredibly creative himself. But the technology piece, remember with architecture, it's still a tool. It doesn't substitute the creative mind, not yet. Although with AI, you can now, there's artificial intelligence designing buildings. But up until that, computers are really only a tool. And luckily, we work with some really talented younger architects that, of course, are totally schooled. They grew up not drawing. Or not drafting. They grew up with technology. And so we work in big teams. It's not just John and I. We work with incredibly talented architects that can kind of seamlessly, take a sketch that we do and create that in the computer, in the 3D software. So it was pretty seamless because it was a slow, gradual technology in the architecture world was a very gradual 20-year process. When I started in architecture, I was drafting. Everybody was drafting. And now nobody drafts. So it wasn't it didn't feel abrupt, even though, again, we do not do Revit. We do not know how to do Rhino. We don't do VR, but we've got the resources that
allow you to do that.
Yeah.
So when you future cast what your next 10, 20 years looks like as terms, I don't ever see you retiring. I mean, you love what you do. So what does it look like for you? Do you dabble?
Well,
do you always
well,
stay?
you had mentioned about my careers. So John and I actually, a lot of people say commercial architect, but that's really not the right word because outside of one project, our entire career has been for nonprofits.
Okay.
We work with nonprofit organizations, whether that's museums, performing arts, religious institutions. And
Mhm.
what matters to us is building in communities,
Mhm.
building architecture for people
It's amazing.
and for culture and for community. So that idea of museums, performing arts, religious institutions, those are all places of gathering.
Mhm.
And there's a high value placed on design and aesthetics. If you
Mhm.
think about traveling all over the world,
Yeah.
where do people visit? They visit architecture. They
Mhm.
like significant pieces of architecture.
Mhm.
And whereas the residential world is really wonderful, it's for a single family,
Correct.
where the institutional work, the nonprofit work, is for communities. So
Brilliant.
we will continue to do that. Still work with, again, we're always just looking for the best clients that share our values to
Mhm.
work with. It's not to say we won't do another house, but we're hoping to continue working with our nonprofit work.
So is there any future projects that are brewing in the Twin Cities for our local audience that we don't know about yet that you can share?
Unfortunately, I can't share it, but we are working with a very, high profile client, again, institutional client, and hopefully we'll be able to share that work soon.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we love what we do.
Yeah. Well, it's just a joy to have had this opportunity over the last few years to get to know you, Joan, and I'm really looking forward to watching your work. And I would love to be able to share your personal story, what you and John created in my mind. I see a lot of real estate, and you created something very special. So I'm
Thank
excited to
you.
share it with everybody. An absolute honor. Everybody, Joan Soranno. We're going to hashtag her and share her link. And I really appreciate you joining us today, Joan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cari Ann.
You have a
My
beautiful
pleasure.
day. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We will be seeing you next time on Fly the Coop. Have a great day.